Is there anything more painful than a singer who once made millions of people cry, ending her life in a cold, empty room, unknown, uninformed? There was once a queen of soul, now living on social welfare, emaciated, unrecognizable. There was once a person who stood on stage with legends, but at the end of her life lived in seclusion, robbed of both her voice and dignity by illness. Another person, once worshipped as a king, had to ask for help from his old fans in his old age. But that's just the surface. Behind the fading glory, there are 21 heartbreaking stories, each of which can make you cry. Watch until the end of the video and tell us who made you feel the most heartbroken. 21. Ruth Brown, the woman who once made America cry but was forgotten by history. They called her the Queen of R&B, the one who turned Atlantic Records into a legendary black music empire. Throughout the 1950s, Ruth Brown was more than a voice. She was an icon. She commanded the stage with an unmatched confidence that made men stop drinking to listen to her every note. But no one expected that the woman who once rocked America would struggle with poverty and illness in the dark in her later years. That was the peak. But behind the lights, Ruth was a single mother with a pile of bills and a series of dirty contracts that the recording industry hid. When the Motown era emerged, Ruth Brown's name was gradually pushed aside. No royalties, no subsidies, no one to stand up for her. She fell into a deep depression, having to rely on home health care. The nights she turned on the radio, listening to her music without receiving a penny, were the nights she cried. One time, Ruth was seen standing outside a radio station in Chicago. It was snowing. She wore an old coat and carried a bag with a tattered Atlantic Records logo. She was not invited to speak. She just wanted to listen to Mama He Treats Your Daughter Mean play again. A young DJ recognized her, but only whispered to his colleague, "Were you?" No one said hello. No one asked. She stood for a moment, then walked away. Ruth's story is not just a personal tragedy. It is living proof of the cruel neglect of the music industry. A woman who built an empire in her old age had to sue the company that built her career for a few belated royalties. If you play soul music tomorrow, remember Ruth Brown. She didn't die of illness. She died of being forgotten. Sometimes the cruelest thing is not fate, but the silence of the people who once applauded you. Be kind to those who give you memories, because when the lights go out, only the human heart is the last light. 20. Etta James. When the beauty that once drove men crazy is the curse of old age. They used to say, when Etta James sang "At Last," the whole heart of America stopped beating for a moment. That voice could make a wife forgive, make a husband cry, and make millions of people believe in love again. But no one knew. It was love obsession, hurt, betrayal. That was a piece of glass embedded in her soul for life. Etta James was beautiful. So beautiful that the showbiz world once whispered, "This is the Billie Holiday of a new era." But that beauty became a double-edged sword. She was controlled, seduced, and addicted. Illegal substances came to Etta like destiny, both to forget and to survive. Throughout the 60s and 70s, although she was still shining brightly on stage, behind the scenes, she collapsed in the dressing room with a needle next to her. Many people remember the 1974 performance when Etta suddenly staggered and fell off the stage. Rumors spread quickly that she was drunk, that she was on drugs, but the audience still applauded because they didn't want to believe it. They just wanted to hear the song that had broken their hearts again. Towards the end of her life, Etta James faced cancer, Alzheimer's, and facial disfigurement due to chemotherapy. She once said, "I'm not afraid of dying. I'm just afraid of being misremembered." And that fear became a reality. When some of her final photos were posted online, the public was shocked. The face that was once a legend had become unfamiliar, withered, and distorted to the point that her old fans could hardly believe it. Someone wrote under the photo, "I wish I had never seen that image. I want to keep Etta in my memory, with her flowing blonde hair and charming smile." But the truth is different. Etta did not age peacefully. She fought, struggled, and was silenced by the world in her pain. Love your artists while they are alive. and remember them even when the final image is not as beautiful as you thought. Because true beauty is the courage to walk through hell and still sing. 19. Mavis Staples, a living monument whose brilliance has been overshadowed by time. People once called her the spirit of resistance, a symbol not only of music but also of the civil rights movement. Mavis Staples once stood next to Martin Luther King Jr., singing a song that sounded like a call for freedom for an entire nation, with the Staples Singers. She touched the hearts of millions through songs like "Respect Yourself, I'll Take You There." But what moved the audience was not only her music, but also her strong appearance, bright smile, and warm, determined eyes. But then, time spared no one. Mavis continued to work until she was 80, still touring, still singing, standing on stage like a warrior who refused to give up. But her appearance changed so dramatically that many audiences were shocked. Her face was gaunt, her eyes were dim, her hands were shaking as she held the microphone as if she were holding on to the last memory of her glory. She was once seen at a small performance in Missouri, singing under the yellow lights, with an audience of less than 100 people. But she sang with all her soul as if she were standing in front of tens of thousands. An elderly audience member recounted that he could not hold back his tears when he saw Mavis step onto the stage. Her hair was loose and silver. She moved slowly and needed someone to support her. But when the music started, she came back to life as if she had never aged. A few minutes later, when the song ended, she sat down, gasped, and then smiled wearily. The audience stood up and applauded, but in their hearts, there was an indescribable sorrow. Mavis Staples did not disappear. She was just aging in the flickering light of her glorious memories. But the change in her appearance made many people not recognize her. And some young people even asked, "Who is she?" Look at the wrinkles on her face like each song that has marked time, and understand that aging is never fading if the heart still sings. We should not only remember a person by the brilliant image they once had, but also by the way they kept the fire burning until the last minute. Because living kindly means knowing how to cherish those who gave us hope. 18. Fontella Bass, the forgotten gospel angel in the market. With her resounding voice and vibrant image, Fontella Bass once made the whole of America ecstatic when she sang "Rescue Me." That song was not only a big hit, but also became a symbol of the Black women's liberation movement, both powerful and imbued with silent pain. When that song sounded, everyone thought Fontella would become a second Diana Ross, but they were wrong. Behind the brief halo was a series of dark days, torn between faith, family, and the price of fame. When her career began to peak, Fontella decided to withdraw from the mainstream music market to return to singing gospel music, following her faith and ideals. But the industry did not spare anyone who stepped into the middle of the road. They rejected her from every project. Royalties were not paid in full. In the following years, Fontella lived like a normal person in the marketplace, selling goods, raising children, and singing in small churches. Someone once saw her sitting outside a supermarket in St. Louis, selling goods and quietly humming the song that had brought her to glory. An old music friend of hers recalled, "One time I visited her. She was knitting a sweater for her grandchild. When I asked about Rescue Me, she just smiled and said, 'Who needs rescuing anymore?'" That sentence was like a farewell to the dream that Fontella once held dear, but could never keep for long. Towards the end of her life, Fontella suffered from many chronic diseases. Relatives said she repeatedly turned down big performance invitations, not because of pride, but because she didn't want the public to see how she had changed. She used to be radiantly beautiful, alive like a flame, but that light has quietly faded without anyone knowing. Fontella Bass is proof of one thing sometimes. The choice to live true to one's heart comes at the price of being forgotten, but kindness, trust, and the courage to step back from fame are things that not everyone can do, and that is the beauty that deserves to be cherished the most. 17. Jean Knight, the woman who dared to ask Mr. Big Stuff but was forgotten as an old joke. Jean Knight once made the whole of America sway with the bold question in the hit Mr. Big Stuff, "Who do you think you are?" with her decisive, personality-rich singing style. Jean was not only a singer, but also a symbol of sweet rebellion, A black woman who was not afraid to question patriarchy in an era of stereotypes, that song was honored, becoming the background music for countless movies, commercials, and parties. But when the stage lights went down, Jean Knight also disappeared silently as if she had never existed. After Mr. Big Stuff, Jean did not have any more hits as resounding as that. The following recordings were not invested in. Her name was labeled a one-hit wonder. Record labels turned their backs. The press ignored her. She returned to New Orleans, living a simple life, away from the center of the entertainment industry. A neighbor once recalled that she often walked to the local grocery store, wearing a wide-brimmed hat and sunglasses, but was almost unrecognizable. I used to tell my wife, "That's the Jean Knight we used to dance to when we were young." But no one believed her. In 2010, a short video of Jean singing Mr. Big Stuff at a small festival in Louisiana was posted. She was over 65, moving slowly, her voice no longer as thick and sharp as before, but her eyes, as she looked down at the audience, who were both recognizing and amazed, still held a sparkle. Some stood up and applauded, others looked at each other, confused, as if not knowing whether to be sad or happy. Perhaps the most painful thing is not being forgotten, but being remembered too late. Jean Knight was once the voice of many women who dared to challenge stereotypes, but in her old age, she became a name that faded into the long list of R&B singers who had a brief golden age. And the irony is, many people remember the tune, but not the singer. Don't let your memories be just nameless music. Call the right name of the artist who touched your heart. That's the simplest way to live kindly with the past and with yourself. 16. Mary Wells, the first woman to be called First Lady of Motown, but ended in darkness that no one knew. Mary Wells was the heart of Motown, before Diana Ross, before Martha Reeves. It was Mary who brought Motown music to the masses with My Guy, an immortal love song that rang out on the radio, television, and weddings for generations. She was the First Lady of Motown not just because of the title, but because she was the first brick that built that empire. But then, she left the record label that had brought her to the top early, and from there, she began to decline. Mary left Motown when her career was at its peak, because of financial and interest disputes, without a strong production team, without the patronage of Berry Gordy. She was lost in a complex and treacherous industry. Her later records were not well received. She moved to many small record labels, sometimes having to perform in little-known cafes, singing her old songs to make a living. In 1980, Mary was diagnosed with laryngeal cancer. Although she had been a famous singer, she gradually lost her ability to sing. No health insurance, no savings. She sold her belongings, had to rely on artist support funds and old friends in the industry. Smokey Robinson once organized a fundraising concert to help her pay her hospital bills. She tried to stay positive, but it is said that she once burst into tears when she saw herself on an old TV set, an old performance tape, recorded when she was at her peak. One of her daughters recalled, "My mother used to be called by the audience, but by the end of her life, no one knocked on her door anymore." When Mary Wells died in 1992, many people did not know. Newspapers rushed to report the news. Radio stations replayed a few songs as a belated farewell, but no monuments were erected, just a quiet end to a life that had lit up so many music lovers' hearts. If you have ever heard My Guy and felt your heart soften, remember Mary Wells today, not as a victim, but as an icon of beauty who was once worshipped, but should never be forgotten, because being kind sometimes means simply not letting the worthy disappear in silence. 15. Carla Thomas, Queen of Memphis, imprisoned in a quiet house by time. With her short hair, smiling eyes, and soft yet sharp voice, Carla Thomas was once honored as the Queen of Memphis Soul, the golden daughter of Stax Records, the symbol of Southern American music. At a very young age, she had hits like Gee Whiz and B.A.B.Y., performed with Otis Redding, and was one of the few black female singers who could shake up national stages in the 60s. Carla was once considered the embodiment of classic beauty, intelligent, elegant, and expressive, but behind the spotlight, there was a life that gradually became quiet, like a smoldering fire that slowly burned out in a forgotten fireplace. Many years after the death of Otis Redding, who was once a close partner and rumored to be Carla's secret lover, She gradually withdrew from the stage. No scandals, no retirement announcements, just that little by little. People no longer saw her name. By the time she turned 60, Carla had almost disappeared from public life. She did not choose to live in New York or California like many other legends, but returned to Memphis, where everything had begun and then ended. A neighbor said that Carla rarely went out. She lived in a small house, without a manager, without ostentation, just quietly played the piano, tended the garden, and occasionally accepted invitations to perform at church. Once, a young journalist came to interview her. She politely refused. "I have nothing more to tell. Everyone has forgotten." She said that not bitterly, but as if accepting a sad fate that most artists of the previous generation had to go through. Carla Thomas did not fall into poverty or serious illness like many others, but the prolonged silence, the silent oblivion, was the greatest pain. One viewer wrote online, "I listened to Gee Whiz again and cried, not because of the lyrics, but because I realized I never thanked her." There are dead stars who have statues. There are people, like Carla, who live on but are buried in silence. If you ever sing along to a Memphis soul song, remember her name. Being kind is not just to others, but also to the memories that nourish our souls. 14. Garland Green, the man who sang once for his whole life, then disappeared as if he had never existed. Garland Green once made millions of people cry with just one song, "Jealous Kind of Fella." That voice, warm, romantic, a little shy but sincere, made many women stop to listen to the radio in the afternoon of 1969. He was not as handsome as Marvin Gaye, not as unconventional as James Brown, but there was something very real, very ordinary that people loved in a time of turmoil. Garland's voice was like a reassuring whisper, "Here I am, a jealous but sincere guy." Success came too quickly for a man from a poor background in Mississippi. Garland had no strong team, no formal training, just his voice and a little luck. After his first hit, he signed with a few small record labels but could not create more miracles. His later songs were not enough to break through. Gradually, he was pushed off the radio, out of the studios, and eventually out of the audience's mind. A veteran DJ once shared in an interview that he saw Garland sitting alone in the corner of a bar at a soul festival in Chicago in 2002. No one recognized him. No one asked for an autograph. The DJ approached, called out Garland Green. The man smiled tiredly, shook his head. "That's close." He finished his glass of whiskey and quietly left, like a ghost of the past. No serious illness, no scandal. Garland just aged, alone, silently, no lights, no halo. No one remembered his name. He used to live on the south side of Chicago in a small rented apartment. When a neighbor asked him what he did for a living, Garland simply said, "I used to be a singer," but that's old news. Garland Green is the image of a generation of artists who are lucky enough to touch the light only once in their lives. But that doesn't make him any less memorable. "Jealous Kind of Fella" still lives in the hearts of those who once loved soul music. If you have heard a song once but remember it for the rest of your life, do not let that singer be forgotten. Some people do not need a great career, they just need to know that they have been heard. And that is why we should live kindly so that no one who has given us beauty will ever feel invisible. 13. Gwen McCrae, the queen of disco who set the dance floor on fire but aged in coldness and poverty. Gwen McCrae was once known as the voice that made the world sweat. Her song "Rockin' Chair" not only set the dance floors on fire in the 70s, but also became a symbol of the sexy, decisive, and liberal soul style of black women in the post-war period. Gwen had a sharp face, a curvaceous, attractive figure, and an indomitable, vibrant spirit. But no one expected that the woman who had captivated millions of people would end her life in silence, with pain, a wheelchair, and a shabby rented house in Florida. When the disco era declined, Gwen struggled to regain her glory. She moved from record label to record label, but no hit was enough to revive her name. Her marriage to singer George McCrae fell apart. She lost her old management system and her steady income. During a performance in Germany in 2012, Gwen suddenly collapsed on stage. Doctors diagnosed her with a stroke and severe nerve damage, and she would be confined to a wheelchair for the rest of her life. Her former manager revealed that in her later years, Gwen lived on welfare, sometimes not even having enough money to buy medicine. She refused performance invitations because her health did not allow it, but also because she did not want people to see her in a weak state. No longer the hot diva image of the past. A former loyal fan visited her at a nursing home in South Florida. He brought an old vinyl of Rockin' Chair. Gwen cried, not because she was emotional, but because he was the first person to mention the song's name in more than a decade. Gwen McCrae is heartbreaking proof that the spotlight never shines forever. And sometimes, the person who made the world rock is sitting quietly in a wheelchair, waiting for someone to remember. If you ever dance to Rockin' Chair, leave a thank you note. Being kind doesn't have to be loud, just don't forget the person who made you feel good about life. 12. Linda Jones, the R&B angel. Linda Jones is called the voice of an angel with many tears, not because she died early, but because what she left behind makes people sob every time they remember her. Her 1967 song, Hypnotized, is a love song that has been played at thousands of weddings and farewells. Linda was not the type of woman who was flashy and sexy like the stars of that time, but she sang as if she were reading her heart's diary. Everyone thought she would become a big name. But then Linda suddenly passed away at the age of 27 while being treated for diabetes. Her death came too quickly, too quietly. But what makes people shudder is many people believe that if she had lived, Linda Jones would have suffered a very cruel old age. Linda's family said that before she died. She said, "If I live a few more years, I won't be able to sing anymore. My voice won't last." There was something in her eyes, as if she knew the fate of black female artists who were forgotten after their glory faded. A recording studio partner recalled, Linda used to look at other stars who were forgotten by the public and say, "They were everything, now they are nothing." She feared that. And perhaps her early departure kept Linda's image forever beautiful in the eyes of the audience. No one had time to see her age, fade, or die from poverty. But that doesn't mean fate was kind to her. It was taken away before she could experience the pain that so many other female artists have. Sometimes dying young is not a relief. It is a reminder that the system has never been fair to talented women without power behind them. If Linda were alive, she would probably still be singing, but in the shadows, and perhaps we would let her slip into oblivion like so many others. But she died with her voice still shining. So today, if you loved Hypnotized, say something. Because living well is not just about remembering the person who is present, it is also about not letting your unfinished dreams be buried by the years. If you have followed us through the first 10 stories, it means you have been listening, not just with your ears, but with your heart. The voices that once lit up the souls of a generation are now gradually being forgotten in the darkness of old age and poverty. But there are 11 names behind, with even more painful fates. Who do you think deserves to be honored again? Or more frighteningly, have any of them been pushed into oblivion by the audience? 11. Barbara Mason, the innocent girl who no one recognizes. When she was only 17, Barbara Mason moved America with Yes, I'm Ready, an innocent, trembling, but emotional love song that many young girls at that time saw themselves in. Her soft voice, gentle face, and shy smile, she was called the Golden Girl of Soul Ballads. As time passed, Barbara continued to contribute to soul and R&B music with feminine songs, becoming a symbol of young love in the hearts of millions of people. But then, music changed. The market no longer had room for sweet love songs. Barbara gradually withdrew from the spotlight, no longer appearing in the media. When some of her current images were leaked, her face was swollen, her hair was disheveled, her figure was unrecognizable. The audience was shocked into silence. Some people did not believe it was her. Some could only sigh. Illness and old age have completely erased the charm of the past. An old fan commented, "I wish I had never seen that image, to keep the Barbara of my childhood." But the truth should not be denied. She is still Barbara Mason, the one who made you believe in love with her voice trembling like the first tears of life. Be kind by remembering them not only for their youthful beauty, but also with gratitude. Because there are people who give us the best memories, even if life does not give them a worthy ending. And Zulema Cuso, the artist who fell into oblivion while still alive. Zulema Cuso was never a star of the big charts, but she was a person of a delicate soul, a member of the group Faith, Hope and Charity, and later a solo artist. Zulema possessed a soaring voice, sharp technique, and a confident performance style. Someone once said Zulema sang as if she was freeing herself. But because of that, she never fit the market formula, and she was left out. In her years after the spotlight, Zulema did not turn to teaching or appearing in nostalgic performances. She chose to be silent. In her twilight years, people saw her doing social work in Tampa, Florida, helping young people stay away from drugs and violence. One artist who collaborated with her shared she lived so simply that no one knew she had ever stood on stage at Madison Square Garden. When she died in 2013, the news was only reported in small lines in the local newspaper. There was no grand memorial, no honoring event. Zulema is a sad reminder of the fate of artists who did not make it big, despite their talent being no less than anyone else's. She lived quietly, contributed silently, and passed away as if she had never been remembered. But if one of her songs ever touched you, don't let silence be the last thing that remains. 9. Peebles, the woman who once said, "I can't stand the rain," then literally disappeared under the rain of memories. With her 1973 hit, "I Can't Stand the Rain," Peebles became the powerful yet painful voice of Memphis soul. The song was called John Lennon's favorite soul song. Her voice, powerful yet sad, was unforgettable. Her sharp face, cool demeanor, silky skin. Anne was more than a diva. She was an icon. But time was something no one could resist, and old age came like a relentless rain on her life. After withdrawing from the spotlight in the early 2000s due to a stroke and health problems, Anne lived a reclusive life in Tennessee, refusing to give interviews or make public appearances. A die-hard fan of hers went to a prayer meeting at her local church, where Anne sometimes sang at Mass when she stepped onto the stage. "I couldn't believe my eyes," he said. Her hair was thin, her body was shaking, but her eyes were still burning with something, like they had never been extinguished. She didn't consider herself forgotten, but that silence, in a modest house, when generations of young singers were still covering her songs, was a pain that didn't need to be expressed in words. Don't let silence be the end of someone who once made your heart flutter. If you ever sang along to "I Can't Stand the Rain" today, remember the woman who stood alone in the rain. Living a good life means not letting anyone who sang for you grow old in the dark. 8. Betty Wright, a feminist singer eroded by family pain and illness. Betty Wright was once a symbol of boldness and wisdom in love. Cleanup Woman brought her to the top when she was only 17 years old. Her soulful voice not only resonated with women, but also made men wary. But in her final years, that halo was overshadowed by cancer, the pain of losing a child, and simmering family conflicts. Once, at an intimate gathering, Betty told her relatives, "I feel like I'm singing with a broken throat." When she died in 2020, many young artists mourned her, but most of the public only mentioned an old hit. No one knew that she was quietly struggling with medical bills and loneliness behind the door of her old mansion. Betty is proof that even if you had everything, you can still grow old in the dark if the world stops listening. And sometimes kindness is simply not letting the songs that once saved your soul go away silently. 7. Shirley Brown, the woman who once spoke directly to her rival, then disappeared as if she had never existed. With Woman to Woman, Shirley Brown not only took the public by storm, she also redefined the way a woman dealt with betrayal. The opening line of the song, "Like a Real Phone Call," has gone down in soul music history. But after that success, Shirley struggled with forgotten records, failed contracts, and the spotlight fading away. When Shirley was invited to sing Woman to Woman again at a small festival in 2010, people saw a gray-haired, heavy-set, and tired Shirley. The audience still applauded, but someone whispered, "She's not the same anymore." Shirley was once the voice of millions of women, but without her youthful voice, the world began to forget her name. And when someone who once made us strong is left behind, that is the greatest injustice. We cannot stay young forever, but we can always remember someone who once changed us if we choose to live kindly with the memory. 6. Millie Jackson, the rebel icon who dared to say everything women thought, but when she got old, there was only silence. Millie Jackson is a name that makes conservatives blush. She doesn't just sing, she tells stories, real, raw, hot, and painful. Songs like "If Loving You Is Wrong" and long lines of torment and irony were once weapons for black women in a society full of taboos. But as time passed, Millie, who was once the center of attention, chose to live in seclusion. Some of the last photos of her life showed her sitting in a wheelchair, without makeup, her eyes cloudy. A fan secretly took the photo and wrote, "I don't know if I should share or let her rest in beautiful memories." And that question remains unanswered. Millie taught us to tell the truth, but when she got old, no one wanted to hear the truth anymore. Let the women who dared to live their truth not be forgotten. Because not everyone is brave enough to challenge prejudice, and not everyone is appreciated when the light goes out. 5. Bobby Womack, the man who sang about love, but died alone and with terrible consequences. Bobby Womack was once the embodiment of the true soul of R&B with a hoarse, troubled voice. He sang about pain, betrayal, and pleasure in a naked, instinctive way. Hits like Across 110th Street or If You Think You're Lonely now turned him into a timeless icon. But the spotlight could not keep him young forever, and Bobby paid the price with a completely collapsed body. In his final years, he suffered from all kinds of diseases: cancer, diabetes, Alzheimer's, and gradually lost the ability to recognize himself. A close friend said that there was a time when Bobby sat in his room, looked up at an old photo of himself on the wall and asked, "Who is this?" No longer had the romantic curly hair, no longer had the arrogant black glasses, only a thin, trembling body on the hospital bed. When he died in 2014, despite media coverage, his funeral was not as crowded as his glorious past had promised. Remember, there are people who sang for you to live, but died in silence. Don't let oblivion be the last thing they receive. 4. Percy Sledge, the man who made the whole world cry, but at the end of his life, no one heard him breathe. Percy Sledge is the definition of a broken heart, with "When a Man Loves a Woman." He did not just sing a song, he made millions of people cry because they thought they were in love. The hit became an anthem of painful love, and Percy became one of the most beloved voices of the era. But behind the spotlight, he lived a simple life, almost anonymous in his final years. As his health declined, he stopped performing. Liver cancer and complications kept him in the hospital for a long time. A nurse at an Alabama hospital shared that very few people visited Percy in his final months. Sometimes he hums a few lines to himself, and when asked who he is, Percy just smiles, a man who is loved. He doesn't blame anyone, but the silence around him is like the bitter answer of time. If you ever cried when you heard "When a Man Loves a Woman," leave something behind today to let him know he's still being heard. 3. Isaac Hayes, the bald man who once dominated every stage, then was forgotten because of his difference. With his sunglasses, shiny bald head, and heavy gold chains, Isaac Hayes was once a symbol of boldness and elegance in the R&B world. He was not only a singer, but also a composer, producer, and actor, the creator of the theme from Shaft soundtrack that won the prestigious Oscar. But after his glory, Isaac fell into a closed lifestyle, gradually withdrawing from the mainstream entertainment industry while pursuing the controversial religion of Scientology. His music projects gradually decreased. He left the show South Park after a conflict, and his health began to decline rapidly. When he suffered a stroke at home in 2008, he collapsed on the treadmill, with no assistant in time to intervene. His sudden death shocked fans, but also reignited fierce debates about his religion and personal choices. Isaac Hayes dared to live differently, and he also aged in ways no one predicted. That does not make him any less great. We should be kind not when they are still stars, but even when they no longer fit the standards set by society. 2. James Brown, the King of Soul, dies in chaos and conflict. James Brown is the godfather of soul, who set the world on fire with "I Got You" and "It's a Man's World." He once stood on the border between music and politics, an undeniable symbol of black cultural power. But his old age was a maze of scandal. He was arrested many times for violent behavior, illegal drugs, and even broken marriages. In his later years, he lived alone, in poor health, and had an unstable mentality. His death in 2006 opened a series of legal disputes that lasted so long that for many years he could not have a stable burial. An icon dies in chaos, the greatest tragedy. Let the glorious past not be obscured by mistakes at the end of life, because living kindly is also learning to forgive those who brought light to our lives. 1. Billy Preston. The genius boy died in oblivion after a crisis and sin. Billy Preston was once called the fifth Beatle, a soul music prodigy, a keyboard genius who played with Ray Charles, George Harrison, and Eric Clapton. But behind the light is a life marred by addiction, violence, abuse, and evasion of the law. Arrested many times for criminal offenses, Preston gradually lost his back with the public. At the end of his life, he suffered from kidney disease, fell into a coma for a long time, and died alone in Arizona. A doctor said that during half a year in the hospital. He had no relatives by his side. Not all tragedies come from fate. Some tragedies come from wounds that never heal. And sometimes, being kind means remembering those who have fallen, because they also flew high. An artist is not just a voice, but a journey, if they end up in silence. It is not a reason to laugh, but a reminder everyone needs to be loved when the halo is gone. Choose kindness, because it is the only thing that never grows old. Thank you for staying until the end of the journey, because of listening like yours. Forgotten voices have a chance to live again if you cherish that memory. Please like the video, share it with those who used to love R&B music, and leave a word of gratitude, because the best memories are those recalled with gratitude. An artist is not just a voice, but a journey. If they end up in silence, it is not a reason to laugh, but a reminder everyone needs to be loved when the halo is gone. Choose kindness, because it is the only thing that never grows old. Thank you for staying until the end of the journey, because of listening like yours. Forgotten voices have a chance to live again. If you cherish that memory, please like the video, share it with people who used to love R&B music, and leave a note of gratitude, because the best memories are those recalled with gratitude.